Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another just wonderful show for you today on this Wednesday morning, I believe, although it feels more like a Thursday, I think. It's a Wednesday in disguise as a Thursday.
It's a wondrous Wednesday, Robby. We'll have lots to discuss. Coming up on Rising, Jack Smith is firing back at the watchdog investigation against him. His legal team says it is without merit.
Plus, good news for Uncle Herschel. Cracker Barrel says that they're reinstating that old logo we all love so much. Oh, isn't that nice?
Oh, fantastic. And President Trump is facing pushback from some on the right over his willingness to accept 600,000 Chinese students into the US. But before we get onto all of that, Robby, what is on your radar?
Happy to tell you, Niall. Now, there was no more perfect encapsulation, in my view, of the Democratic Party's crime problem than Morning Joe Scarborough's bruising interview with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Now, Morning Joe is of late a more moderate voice, I guess, among liberal commentators, and is using his platform to push the Democratic Party to move ever so slightly, a little bit, closer to the average voter's views on some issues like crime and policing. Many polls show broad public support for President Donald Trump's efforts to reduce crime, which have included deploying federal troops to Washington, D.C. Now, we should remain vigilant about increasing federalization of law enforcement because we don't want to live in a police state, and while also recognizing the inarguable successes associated with such an approach. Namely, D.C. finally had a murder-free week last week, thanks in part to the presence of the National Guard. Trump thinks that what worked in D.C. could work elsewhere and has suggested that other big cities beset with crime problems could benefit from an influx of federal troops and/or resources. Chicago is one of those cities, but its far-left mayor, Brandon Johnson, is opposed to Trump's plan. And when pressed by Morning Joe on whether the city should accept federal help, here's what Johnson said.
You believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay,
I'm not saying that
that's not the question I asked. My question is, and I just need a yes or a no, do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer?
Johnson simply refused to directly answer the question and mentioned that he thought other things are more important than law enforcement. And so Morning Joe asked again.
If that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago.
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, that's number two. Now, after the second non-answer, Scarborough asked a third time.
If you get all of those other social programs that 800 million that New York City does, Los Angeles, other people do with great success, would an additional 5,000 cops on the streets in Chicago help complement those programs to make Chicago safer?
Look, we are working hard to make sure that our police department is fully supported. I don't believe that just simply putting out an arbitrary number around police officers is the answer.
It wasn't an arbitrary number, it was a specific number. But the man either does not believe or will not admit that more police on the streets would deter crime, even though we know it would. Look, this aspect of crime isn't complicated. If you have more police, you will get less crime. Except for the most far-left scholars of criminology, experts, even those who support criminal justice reform, as I do, agree that when you have more members of law enforcement patrolling the streets, busting the bad guys, and clearing cases, well, yes, you get less social disorder, not as many incidents of crime. The question is not really whether more police would help, it's whether national police are a long-term solution, whether other trade-offs are worth considering, like whether civil liberties are being undermined, and frankly, whether there's enough money to pull it off. Chicago, for example, is facing significant budget constraints. Reason Magazine's Christian Britschke notes that Johnson had to break a pledge not to raise taxes. In fact, he's had to increase taxes on everything, from digital streaming services to grocery bags to ride-sharing trips. He also tried to pass a $300 million property tax, but the city council killed it. My point is that Chicago might want to think about whether it's really going to say no to federal help. Getting our cities under control is, after all, very expensive work. And I thought the mayor really struggled in that interview. You can say that, look, I don't think, national police is a long-term solution to whatever problems we're facing, but you're not admitting that gravity exists and the sky is blue if you're not willing to say that more police would do something for crime.
So we disagree on this one in a few ways. One is in relation to Chicago. I think Brandon Johnson understandably has to be cognizant of the history in that city. Police officers in the street did not do much for Laquan McDonald when one of them murdered him in 2014. I was also looking, and this may appeal more to your libertarian values, between 2019 and 2023, the taxpayers of Chicago had to pay $384.2 million to settle complaints against the police for violating residents' rights. That came in turn slightly after the Department of Justice had to impose a so-called consent decree, which, as you know, happens when police departments are perceived to be in particularly egregious violation of people's rights. Now, as for the broader picture of police in the street, it doesn't seem to me as clear-cut as it seems to you. There was one study done, University of South Florida professor, drew together reports over decades about this issue of the correlation between more police on the street and reductions in crime. She took 62 studies, 32 agreed with you, and 30 said there was no real obvious correlation. And so the argument is it about the number of police or about policing strategies? So, I don't really agree with your argument here. And in relation to the DC point, I would say that the opinion poll done by the Washington Post of DC residents came out with people massively opposed, 17% to 79% opposed to what Trump was doing.
Of people in DC.
Of people in DC.
Sure. I was talking about nationally where America is on crime. Well, you're getting to something. I think the trade-offs on civil liberties are worth considering, and sure, you can call it more effective policing, but I haven't looked at specifically the study you're referencing, and but my understanding is even progressives who want different policing strategies admit that. Right. If we had cameras everywhere, if we had a surveillance state, if we had police all over the metro, yeah, there would be less crime. Now, we can't necessarily do that. We can't necessarily afford to do that. Right. And we wouldn't want to because it might be too disruptive. But whether it would deter crime itself is, I think, not as much of an open question, but maybe you can find some studies that suggest otherwise.
Well, no, you're talking about an all-out. In an all-out police state, would there be less crime? Yeah. Yes, there would. And we would consider the trade-offs to be bad in that respect,
but we wouldn't pretend that water isn't wet. We wouldn't say, and this is not even going to affect crime. No, it's going to deter crime. This is the project on some level of civilization, is deciding how much order you want and how much liberty you are willing to lose to get it.
Right.
And some of us want it here, and some of us want it here, and some of us want it here on this issue, but here on this issue. That's what it takes. But I would still say, I know Chicago is, I'm not exactly sure where it is on the ranking of crime cities right now. I bet it has more crime than its residents want to like. And while I'm civil liberties inclined and also am appalled by what happened to Laquan McDonald or what other examples are, that doesn't mean we still need to have policing services met some way or the other.
Yes, but I don't think...
The left just says, okay, then we'll have no policing. Well, then you're going to have greater disorder and greater death.
Yes, but Brandon Johnson, he's not an anarchist. He's not arguing that there should be zero police. Scarborough was concentrating on the provision of, what was the number he said, at 5,000 extra police. And Johnson was saying, well, it's actually more complicated than that because there are social corollaries or correlations to criminal behavior. And if you just concentrate on policing, then you neglect those other factors, which seems to me a completely valid argument to make.
Yeah, I guess it's about what you emphasize, and I think the right would say that emphasizing the other things and spending vigorously on all those other programs, I would love that if that worked instead of having to have more police. I just don't know that they've pulled it off in any of these major cities.
We shall see. Jack Smith responding to the investigation against him for the first time. What the former special counsel has to say about allegations of him violating the Hatch Act. After a quick break, we will be right back. Former special counsel Jack Smith is finally responding to the investigation against him, his first since the probe's announcement. Attorneys for Smith say the watchdog investigation is, quote, imaginary and unfounded, and also totally without merit. In a letter to the Office of Special Counsel obtained by the Associated Press, Smith's legal team saying, quote, Mr. Smith's actions as special counsel were consistent with the decisions of a prosecutor who has devoted his career to following the facts and the law without fear or favour and without regard for the political consequences, not because of them.
Republican Senator Tom Cotton requesting the probe into Smith, centering around if the former special counsel violated the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act is a federal law that prevents some government officials from engaging in political activity. Cotton alleges that Jack Smith attempted to interfere with the 2024 election by investigating President Trump, and that Smith attempted to fast-track the case against Trump.
Smith was leading two cases against Trump. Those were, of course, the federal classified documents case based around Mar-a-Lago, and the one centred on Trump's actions to try to overturn the result of the 2020 election. Both cases were dropped upon Trump winning his second term.
Yeah, I don't have much more additionally to say about this since last we discussed it. I have a sort of skepticism or opposition to Hatch Act stuff specifically because some of these other, what are being framed by the media as retaliatory investigations into Letitia James or Adam Schiff, at least are based on kind of mortgage and financial that you can argue are of interest to the taxpayers and would help them get more favorable tax status. What has, I think, more legitimacy is what I'm saying than this, which is the Hatch Act, again, is just for government officials. I understand in a vacuum why we don't want government employees engaging in partisan political activity while they're being paid, but also all the work they do is political, and they travel for work, and these are not such clear-cut distinctions to me all the time. What's campaigning, what's just doing your job? And I think it would be easy to ensnare Democrats and Republicans in this kind of thing. So I'm looking at this one with an eyebrow raised, I think, more so than the others.
Yeah, look, there's a separate discussion that would be about the Hatch Act more broadly. In this case, I think, firstly, I'm glad that Smith is defending himself, and I think he should do so against charges or allegations that I regard as both ludicrous and flimsy at the same time. His lawyers in this letter make the point that if you took Cotton's interpretation of the Hatch Act, the effect of that would really be to make any elected official immune from prosecution for anything, because any time an elected official was prosecuted, they could turn around and say, well, the prosecutor's trying to hamper my re-election chances or mess up my political fortunes or anything like that.
Right, you could say the same as of a probe into Hunter Biden or something of that nature. Oh, well, you're interfering in the election results because this has something to do with the election. Right. And that would obviously be not an argument that Republicans would adopt. So
no,
I'm a little
wouldn't
put off by this one too.
Wouldn't really be viable. My broader point, I think, on this one is the idea that Jack Smith did something malevolent by pushing for the case to go to trial. I find just an absurd argument, because we know that a sitting president is immune from prosecution during the time they're in office.
Right.
So what Smith, on one hand, is trying to do, or was trying to do, was bring Trump to trial, where Trump would have the same rights as any defendant to try to rebut the charges against him, the presumption of innocence, trial by jury, would have all those safeguards for his side. And Smith wanted that to happen. What Trump and his side wanted to do was kick the cases past the election in the hope that he would win it and would therefore be rendered immune. Right. And that gamble or that gambit worked. And so Trump got away with it.
Had the right to do that. The government has the right to try to bring its case more rapidly, to have a favorable, like his job is to, a prosecutor's job is to score a conviction, and they use whatever tools at their disposal to do that. The defendant's job is to not get convicted, and if in this case delaying was favorable, and so they did that, and here it is what it comes to.
It is true that it is a defendant's job and a defense team's job to avoid a conviction. I think the issue here is that Trump has got out of any trial at all. He has not been willing to submit to the courts and seek to win an acquittal. He has, in fact, thwarted the case against him.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, he was acquitted by the Senate in an impeachment trial, which I think should have closed the door to all of these things.
But that's not, I mean, an impeachment trial is not a criminal trial. I mean, it's a different thing.
I mean, I would argue, and it's just my view, because everyone to the left of me wanted to bring criminal charges, and everyone to the right of me thought, bringing any charges in any case against Trump at all was wrong. And so I'm just sitting here, I guess, in the middle by my lonesome self saying, given what Trump did with respect to the 2020 election, I thought the right response was impeachment and a vote for removal, which he was not removed. And then that should have been the end of that. That was the outcome suited to his level of wrongdoing, had to do with his presidential duties, something that our Constitution describes and gives Congress power to weigh in on. And once they decided not to remove him on that basis, I would have put that to rest.
Well, no surprise, perhaps, that I don't see it the same way.
No one does, because
you're thwarted by the left and the right.
Thought he was totally innocent.
I mean, in relation to the election effort, naturally enough, there's a lot of focus on January the 6th. The case was actually broader than that.
The other parts of it were more compelling to me. It was the January 6th related stuff with the Jack Smith indictment that I thought there was just. I mean, I've said this before in Rising, but it's the words, at this point he tweeted, at this point he said over and over in the indictment that get into my kind of free speech concern. Obviously, you don't have a free speech right to organize some kind of criminal conspiracy, but so much of it hinged on the things he said on the day of. Now, I know, and in some ways I thought the Georgia case was stronger, and that one went awry because of the uniquely gifted individuals they put in charge of managing. Because at least in that one, they were pointing to actions, to meetings held by a slate of electors that were not the correct electors, that were more action verby rather than just speaking to his state of mind or the things he thought and said, which should have been protected even if they were wrong.
But this actually goes to one of my points. I mean, you and I have spoken about January 6th numerous times. We won't relitigate that. But even in the Georgia element, one of the charges that Jack Smith brought against Trump was infringement of rights, I think is the exact statute. Basically, the charge, which I fully agree with, that if Trump had been successful in, for example, calling the Georgia Secretary of State and telling him to find me the votes, the effect of that would have been to traduce the rights of Georgian voters who had voted for Joe Biden as president. And Trump's efforts were aimed at depriving them of the right to have their verdict respected. That seems clearly a crime to me. Trump would have had the courtroom chance to rebut it if he wished, but I think that was an absolutely valid case to make.
That's so fun. We just strongly disagree on that. I see that as perfectly within his rights to persist in believing that there were those votes for him and that they had not been counted, that they should be found. He's totally wrong, but that he had the right to do that, and I would not have seen it as intimidation, but jury will not get to decide what it was.
Indeed.
Remember how much hate Cracker Barrel got when it debuted its new logo? Well, it seems the company has listened. We'll discuss that next. Don't go anywhere. Cracking up over Cracker Barrel. Last week on our show, we talked about the new logo for that popular restaurant chain and how unpopular it was on social media. Now the company is responding by, guess what? Getting rid of the new logo. Cracker Barrel made the announcement Tuesday evening with a message on its website saying this: "We thank our guests for sharing your voices and your love for Cracker Barrel. We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old-timer will remain. Yay! Victory! Hooray!" Niall is so excited. You're relieved.
Just beside myself with excitement. Prior to the announcement that the new logo was being ditched, even President Trump weighed in on the controversy, because of course he did. On Truth Social, he said, "Cracker Barrel should go back to the old logo, admit a mistake based on customer response, the ultimate poll, and manage the company better than ever before. They got $1 billion worth of free publicity if they play their cards right."
That's an excellent point.
Once the change was announced, the president quickly responded, writing again, "Congratulations, Cracker Barrel, on changing your logo back to what it was. All of your fans very much appreciate it. Good luck into the future. Make lots of money, and most importantly, make your customers happy again."
What a feel-good story. Just amazing. Cracker Barrel was facing backlash, not just for the new logo, also for its plans to redesign the interior of its restaurants with a more simplistic and modern look. For now, at least, the company has not announced any changes to its plans on that end.
You're very excited, Robby, I can tell.
Our long national nightmare is over. Free at last, free at last. This is great. No, people took this all very seriously. I'm sure I've probably been in a Cracker Barrel before.
I think I've been in one once.
Yeah. Needless to say, this isn't some cherished part of my childhood,
Sure.
and because I am a millennial, the redesigned interior looked just fine. It was redesigned for millennial sensibilities with our millennial gray and our very modern, which is exactly my take. I loved it, but it's not for me. It's for the ordinary folks of America who like the kind of rustic or deliberately tacky or whatever it is look. I did hate the new logo. I mean, I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night screaming, no, Cracker Barrel won.
Throwing darts at the new logo on your wall.
It was too minimalist, and when they had this nice iconic logo, I don't know.
Yeah.
And more generally, I don't like when anything changes. Change, always bad. All changes are bad.
Well, that's
all of them.
That's why you're basically a conservative, despite your libertarian tendencies.
Conservative by disposition.
Yes.
All change is bad.
A lot of people are resistant to change, generally, which is why we get into rows or furors like this. I find it mystifying that this became as big a thing as it did, and the allegations of wokeness and like, how could they possibly consider taking the old guy and the barrel off the logo? I didn't mind the logo. I probably wasn't going to be a Cracker Barrel customer either way. I went to one once in North Carolina. That's the full extent of my Cracker Barrel custom. But the fact that it became this national inflamed debate was just completely perplexing to me.
I think the Democrats were very smart to tweet that they don't like the logo either. The Democratic Party tweeted that. They did not want to get Sydney Sweeney'd. They did not want to have a news cycle of people saying, oh, conservatives love something that's well-liked or beautiful or classic, and Democrats want to change it and make it worse and uglier and bad. And they were trying to avoid that, and I think they successfully did. Yeah, it's not really... the reason conservatives are calling it a woke thing... I don't know. It's not really woke.
It's because there was an old white guy on the old and now returned logo, right?
Spearheading it is a white woman who's now, I think, fits the demographic of people. Kathleen Kennedy. She just made Star Wars woke, ruined it. That is actually a well-founded argument. But anyway, just it's going back to the old one. So.
Well. There we are.
And Trump, in his business savvy, says it could just be free advertising for the company.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I do think there was so much negative publicity that I'm not sure this is an all publicity is good publicity case. But in any event, in much sadder news, a deadly big rig crash on the Florida Turnpike has taken center stage in the immigration debate. And now Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is threatening to pull 3 states' funding over it. Hear from him after the break. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is threatening to pull millions of dollars of federal funding from California, Washington State and New Mexico if, as he alleges, they continue to fail to enforce English language requirements for truckers.
Secretary Duffy did accuse 3 Democratic-led states of allowing drivers to stay on the road despite having English language rules violations on their record. Now, in California's case, Duffy said roughly 34,000 inspections found a language violation, and only 1 resulted in a driver being taken out of service. In Washington, he says, 6,000 inspections found a language violation, only 4 drivers were pulled.
This all comes after a foreign-born truck driver was involved in a deadly big rig crash on the Florida Turnpike and reportedly later failed both English and road sign tests. Take a look. You may remember the viral video that took the internet by storm. You can see the truck driver, 28-year-old Harjinder Singh, allegedly make an illegal U-turn and a minivan slamming into the side. That's a pretty horrifying video. That crash took the lives of all 3 people in the van. Some authorities say Singh, a native of India, was living in the country illegally and was issued a driver's license from California, one of just 19 states that issue licenses regardless of immigration status. That being said, there are conflicting reports about much of this, with some accounts suggesting he in fact did have a work permit while his immigration case was being adjudicated.
Following the crash, DOT officials say that Singh took an English fluency and road sign test, both of which they say he failed, only answering 2 of 12 English fluency questions correctly, and only correctly identifying 1 of 4 road signs that had been shown to him.
This is a safety issue. Making sure drivers of very heavy 80,000-pound rigs can speak the language is truly a critical safety issue. And some complained about it. We implemented it at the end of June, and all of us in America saw what happened in Florida, where we had an individual who we tested this individual after the crash, but no doubt could not speak the English language and could not understand road signs.
Duffy says this case is particularly egregious because Singh was pulled over just last month in New Mexico, and he was let go. However, the New Mexico governor's office says body cam footage showed that Singh did understand English in that encounter. Let's watch.
My first time in the already in the 5 year in the no ticket.
No tickets?
Yeah.
I hate to be the first guy to write you a ticket, but...
Full name, sir?
Yes.
Meantime, Singh is currently being held in Florida, and he's facing up to 45 years in prison following the crash. An online petition pleading for his, quote, fair sentencing has garnered more than 2.5 million signatures. It calls on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to consider alternative sentences, such as counselling or community service. There's a lot in this one, Robby. What's your take?
This has generated a lot of conversation in conservative circles, and I understand. 3 people are dead after the illegal turn he made in the middle of in a wrongful place where you can't do that. Look, I mean, it is a safety issue. The people driving big trucks have to. They don't have to be English literature majors, but they have to be able to understand English well enough and more importantly, understand road signs. I think that is a pretty reasonable thing to do. Now we're considering all sorts of pausing of work visas for people doing this that is going to actually like devastate the industry, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry for people who are foreign workers who drive responsibly, and this is not their fault, and I'm not big into collective punishment, so I kind of feel bad for everyone getting punished because one guy did something really bad, but this guy did do something really bad, and if I lost someone because of this, I'd be pretty outraged.
Sure.
I'd be outraged at officials. It's confusing trying to understand whether he was credentialed correctly and whether it was done right here, or they should have known. It looks to me, if I squint at it, that there was some official neglect in how his situation was handled, getting him onto the road. But yeah, we should be allowed to call for basic safety standards without that necessarily being labeled nativism or xenophobia or something, right?
Yes. Look, first of all, he, assuming from the video evidence, he did something terribly wrong that resulted in 3 people's deaths. Yeah. That is a very, very bad thing. I'm sure it is an enraging thing for the families of who are now bereaved, and I get all of that. The political side of the argument seems to me to throw together quite a few disparate things into one kind of stew that can be perhaps politically advantageous for people like Sean Duffy. For example, you mentioned the issue of road signs versus English proficiency. It is certainly true that anybody driving a vehicle should understand road signs and the basic rules of the road. I don't know what test this man underwent to get that license, and I'm talking here separate from his immigration status. Now, the way
you gotta take tests to drive a car, you gotta get licensed.
Exactly. Now, in terms of, the whole purpose or the whole guiding principle of road signage is it's mostly not related to language skills at all. It is mostly done by graphics, partly because so many people are, not English speakers, but also because there's a certain proportion of the population that's illiterate,
right.
And so you don't want to
make... When you zoom by them quickly, they're supposed to be quick and intuitive, and you're reading a chapter of a book or something.
Exactly, and you figure it out. So this person appears to have committed a heinously awful driving error, right, and killed people, and should face the consequences for that. I don't really get the the bearing of his English proficiency, which appears to be basic but somewhat there, judging from the other stop, to what in fact happened, which is somebody making an illegal U-turn, which, you know, I see cars doing all the time in almost any city I'm in.
Yeah, I think people are using, or some people on the right are using the language argument as a substitute for what they really mean, which is just that, I mean, this is true to some extent, stereotypes about how people drive in other countries. I've spent time in other countries, and it's way more aggressive, the driving. I mean, that is true on some level. There are a lot of, in this city, there are a lot of people who deliver food on those motorized moped-type bikes. And guess what? They do drive like maniacs. There's no way around it. It's true. It happens. There's a fear, I think, is what's being expressed about letting tons of people come here and drive like maniacs because that's what they used to do in the place they're from. And this is true.
A very shady argument, Robby.
I don't know.
If people are driving like maniacs, if people are driving like maniacs, then they should be penalized for whatever traffic violations they're making.
Right.
To suggest that people are driving like maniacs because they're Indian or whatever seems like a crazy argument to me.
I'm not saying it's like hardwired into their DNA or so this is biological. It's just there is more aggressive. I've never been to India. I don't know what the situation is like in India, but I've been to Europe and other places, and the driving is more aggressive.
Well, I would say, and perhaps this will appeal to your heritage.
How is it?
The best driving I saw in any place I visited was in Italy, in fact.
Really?
Yeah, where on highways I thought the driving was much superior to either the US or my native Ireland or Britain. So, you know, I also don't think that means we should let all Italian immigrants, with apologies to the preceding waves of Soaves, that we should just give them like HGV licenses with no test.
I mean, it's a cultural assimilation argument that is being sneakily made. And I'm all for people coming here. I want foreign-born people to come here and drive cars or do food deliveries. It's good work for them. We like those services. Everybody wins. But if it is done in such a permissive manner that there's no verifying that these people are good enough to drive under U.S. conditions, then it's going to poison the support for doing this at all among the populace, and they're all going to get kicked out, and that would be bad.
Well, I think there should be, I'm all in favor of stricter driving standards. I, of course, being a big fan of big state government, would have a mandatory test beyond a certain age, 70 or 75, for everyone to continue driving.
Oh, we can agree on that. Get those old folks off the road. Yank those driver's license, baby. Gone. Do you drive?
I do, yeah. I mean, I don't own a car here, but I drive rental cars on a regular basis. That's all.
I have a car, and because my scooter, as you'll know, was stolen about a month ago, just before the crime crackdown, I like to think that our dear President Donald Trump was responding to my specific needs.
National Guard defending the Soave scooter.
I've been driving in while I'm waiting for my replacement scooter.
How's that been for you?
Well, I live like right over there, so it takes about 2.5 minutes to get here, and I have no complaints, but I do miss scooting here, especially with such lovely weather.
Are you not thinking about the planet and its effects on your fuel emissions?
No. No, I am not. Didn't even occur to me. Thank you for that, Niall. All right, next up, as trade negotiations with China continue, the Trump administration is allegedly allowing 600,000 new students from the communist country to study in the U.S. The backlash from MAGA World next. Stay with us.
President Trump butting heads with his MAGA base after he said Monday that he plans to allow 600,000 students from China. Take a listen.
We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow, it's very important, 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China.
Those comments mark a stark shift from earlier this year when Secretary of State Marco Rubio vowed to aggressively revoke visas from Chinese students, especially those with alleged connections to the Chinese Communist Party or those studying in critical fields for national security. While the reason behind the 180 is not entirely clear, it does come amid trade negotiations with China.
Meanwhile, the plan has provided common ground for warring MAGA factions. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and right-wing influencer Laura Loomer, who've been fighting about a lot of stuff, agreed in separate social media posts following the president's announcement. Greene posted X, "We should not let in 600,000 Chinese students to attend American colleges and universities that may be loyal to the CCP." She added, "Why are we allowing 600,000 students from China to replace our American students' opportunities? We should never allow that, and we need more trade school graduates." And Loomer posted in part, "Nobody, I repeat, nobody wants 600,000 more Chinese students, aka communist spies, in the United States." But on Monday, Laura Ingraham had the opportunity to ask Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick about the plan. Here's his response.
The president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top, all the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump.
That is not the way I would have defended the policy, which I'm in support of, because the right wants universities to go out of business, so it was not a well-argued point. I also think the 600,000 number sounds just eye-poppingly large to MAGA, so I don't think Lutnick or actually Trump should have said the number of Chinese students he's willing to take. Maybe he could say it privately to the Chinese if he's negotiating with them, because that has scared MAGA. MAGA doesn't want more Chinese students coming here for two reasons: for national security reasons in their mind, and then for, kind of competing with American labor and American students. I'm totally of a different mind. On the labor competition argument, I just don't care at all. I dismiss that entirely. I'm against affirmative action. I'm against preferences. I just want the most qualified people in every job and in every school. And if it's all Chinese-born students, fine. If it's all Jewish people, if it's all 6 foot tall, purple-haired, what, I don't care. Whoever is the most.
What was yesterday's phrase? Sandal-wearing, yeah,
Anton
Scalia,
those
hippies.
sandal-wearing hippies, yeah. So that I don't care about. On the national security argument, we should certainly vet, yes, for loyalty to the CCP, although the problem is that the CCP is the ruling government, and people who might not actually be sympathetic to the CCP might have to nevertheless swear some oath of fealty because it's an authoritarian government. We should also not send them back after. That's the part that I most object to in this taking Chinese student visas. We bring them here, educate them, and then send them back. No, have them stay here, do work for our economy, for our tech companies, because we want to be globally competitive with China, which is why I do support doing this, because we can't fall behind if the best, most brilliant tech workers are in China or India or wherever it is. We need them here. My immigration policy is rich, smart, attractive. Everyone who's rich, smart, and attractive should be brought to the U.S. Brought now. True.
And how would we do the attractiveness part of the test? Would we have a hot or not kind of test?
You know what? Trump loves reality TV. I think he's perfectly suited to that task.
So, on the substance of the policy, you and I have a lot of common ground here. In fact, I think we both feel that the more students from China or anywhere else is a good thing, and they're making the wrong, they're getting to the right destination by making the wrong argument.
Yeah.
I am not a huge fan of the industrialization of the university college complex here, and I think a lot of it has served to simply drive up prices for education because of layers of administrators and all the rest, and that then makes college less affordable to people of a lower income, which I have a problem with on all kinds of levels. That being said, the point that you make, I think, is the key one here about global competitiveness. It is imperative for the United States to attract the smartest people it possibly can, and to harness that intelligence and that knowledge and that capacity for innovation for American purposes. A really obvious, really effective way to do that is bring smart young people here for college education and find a way to keep them here, as you said, after they finish. And so barring them on the basis, I mean, Laura Loomer I don't even like discussing because I find her so nutty at times, but they're all communist spies. Come on, let's not be ridiculous about this.
Right, and again, it's more likely that they have to serve the Communist government of China's interests if they remain in China.
Right.
It is about national security. I do not want the next century to be led by China. I think that would be bad for the world. I think that would be very bad. In order for the U.S. or liberal democracies of the Western world to continue to lead, we need to be competitive in tech in particular. And so to close the door to, or to make innovation or good work in those fields less likely is a national security concern. That's a greater national security concern. It's not out of like a naive disinterest in China's success. I want to beat them, and this is a way to do it without doing war. Because we don't want to have a military conflict with them. Yeah. We want to win it the same way we win the Cold War, not actually by fighting them, but by outcompeting them and having a more robust economy, showing the benefits of an open society and liberal democracy and free markets, and having a society that doesn't practice those things collapse because it cannot reward talent the way we have. That's what we're going to do with China, hopefully.
Right. And it is broader than China as well. I mean, I get, of course, that we're discussing Chinese students here, but I mean, we have seen European governments recently trying to make big efforts to draw American researchers or US-based researchers to Germany and France because they understand that they're in the same global competition to get the most talented people within their borders and to harness those people for their purposes.
Yes. And also, this will demonstrate that if you have a more permissive immigration policy, then you can do vetting. Because you're saying, we are going to take these people, but they can look at them. They should do that, absolutely. Whereas if you have a restrictive policy like we do with, with immigrants coming from South America, then they're all going through under unsafe conditions. It's time to vet them, they're vetted later, and it leads to the kind of disorder that makes everybody mad. We can have an orderly process. I'm all for an orderly process that involves vetting, but if you actually create a process, then you can do that. Whereas if you have no process, then people try to find creative ways to get in and you miss things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just finally, because I know we have to wrap up, I was very struck by yesterday at that cabinet meeting, Trump defending his proposal here on the basis that he was honoured that these students would choose to come to the United States. Seems to me a very un-Trumpian thing to say, but good for him in that instance.
He did promise during the campaign on one of those Tech Bro podcast things that, So he actually has shown some degree of consistency on this. There's a lot of people in MAGA who don't like it and are trying to push him off the policy, to be clear. But he's actually talked about it a couple times, which I think is good. Next up on Rising, I'm sure y'all have heard about Taylor Swift's engagement. We will be talking about that next. Niall is a big Swiftie. I know he was excited. We'll be right back. Moment for us all. Taylor Swift broke the internet when she announced her engagement to Kansas City Chiefs star Travis Kelce. The pop icon posted photos of her and Kelce's engagement on Instagram Tuesday with the caption, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Aren't they cute? Post shows the NFL player down on one knee, surrounded by pink and white flowers, and the world is so excited. That's an understatement. Yesterday, when fans Googled Taylor Swift's name, confetti even came up.
This, of course, is just about all anyone was talking about yesterday. Even President Donald Trump reacted to the engagement during his cabinet meeting.
I think he's a great player. I think he's a great guy, and I think that she's a terrific person. So I wish them a lot of luck.
It was very kind remarks from Donald Trump, who has criticized Taylor Swift in the past. For she's not a extremely political person, but she did endorse Biden and was in support of Biden, which Trump didn't appreciate. So it's nice to see him just say nice things about them there. Everyone is so excited about this. You are a big Swiftie, I know. So you must have been you must have been screaming like a little girl. Whee! Yay! That was you. That was my impression of you yesterday. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Could you ever imagine me acting in that way? The accent doesn't help in that respect either. Look, I think it's good news. I think we're all in probably need of some good news. Good for her. I mean, I am a genuine admirer of her talent. I think she's a hugely talented songwriter in particular. I think as a performer, she's great. And I never really get, some people have a real dislike of her, which I don't understand at all. I mean, setting aside even the musical talent, she seems a very fundamentally decent, humorous, nice person. I think Travis Kelce got lucky. I personally thought her previous boyfriend, Joe Alwyn, was a slightly better match for her, I thought, but she didn't think so. And so good luck to the happy couple.
I agree. I'm a kind of neutral to moderately positive Taylor Swift. I like her music just fine. I'm not a devoted fan, and I'm also not a big NFL guy. But they seem like a happy couple. I was trying to think, what am I even going to say about this? This is big news. Everyone is obsessed with except me. I think the engagement photos were nice and looked a little bit like Lord of the Rings-ish to me. That looks like the woods of Lothlorien. Did anyone else get that impression by it? So
I'm glad you were able to get a Lord of the Rings reference, even to Taylor Swift's engagement.
Now, people are saying like this is going to cause a baby boom among the millennial generation. Everyone is going to get married, have a bunch of kids now because they're leading the way. Like actually, the pro-natalist are like right conservative people. There's some liberals too. I think this is genuinely going to be a great moment for our struggle to produce more stable families and babies and everything. This is going to be a positive part in that trajectory.
Taylor Swift becomes the trad wife model for all of those people. We'll have to talk to our more socially conservative brothers and sisters about all of this. I do think, to your point about everyone talking about it, I'm not sure if you were in our newsroom when the news broke, but there was a massive hubbub, and it's the first time in forever that I can remember a newsroom being all like talkative and excited about something that wasn't some apocalyptically bad news of some kind. Like, it wasn't about people being slaughtered or some like downfall of democracy. It was like, oh, Taylor Swift and Travis got engaged. What a nice moment.
It's nice. Well, Taylor, if you're listening, you get invited. If I'm invited to your wedding, you can be invited to my wedding.
Well, I was going to say it was sort of the most well-publicized engagement since your own. A lot of tabloid interest in both of those.
I had another pair of friends who just got engaged too. It feels like everybody's getting engaged. It's
I'm avoiding all of that. Don't let any more men down.
I know there are people worried that this is going to affect Kelce's upcoming NFL season, so maybe that was the only sour note. If
might make him too soft for his NFL.
What is that? Is it Philadelphia?
Kansas City.
Chiefs. They played each other. Right?
They did. Apparently, it's the only team.
See how closely I follow the National Football.
Allegedly now the only team which has a plurality female support because all of the Swifties go into it.
How about that?
There you go.
All right, that does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.